My name is Dorothy Guerrero, and welcome to Global Justice Now's interview series, Global Perspectives on the Coronavirus Pandemic. Through this collection of interviews, we share updates and analysis on the situation in the Global South in this time of unprecedented global crisis, from the standpoints of social movements and progressive groups that are playing key roles in collectively addressing the pandemic. More importantly, we are sharing how they are imagining this and shaping the world anew through their ongoing actions and initiatives. For this interview, our focus is on the Philippines, which is experiencing the health and economic impacts of the pandemic under what social movements there call the worst normal. The lockdown is one of the longest and toughest in the world. People, especially the poor that are caught violating restrictions, were beaten up by police and put in overcrowded prisons at times. The capital city of Manila is now easing the general community quarantine, and this shift is happening without substantial health protection, mass testing, and improvement of public spaces and services. We have Luke Espiritu to tell us more, and especially on the condition of workers. Luke is the national
Hi.
president of the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, BNP, or Solidarity of Filipino Workers, and the Solidarity of Union in the Philippines for Empowerment and Reform, or SUPER. It's a trade union federation. Luke has an extensive experience in union organizing, which includes rights education, campaigns on democratic issues, and organizing direct actions and negotiation to win workers' demands. Hello, Luke, how are you?
Hello, Dorothy, or Dottie is your nickname. Good. It's evening here in Manila, so I wanna greet you. Good evening.
Oh yeah, good evening, magandang gabi. So Luke, can you tell us more first? Can you tell us about your union or your organization?
Okay, I'm the national president of what we call in Filipino as the Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, translated into English as Solidarity of Filipino Workers. It is a political organization of workers. Now, it is different from a trade union federation because a federation, a labor federation, would be taking care of or devoting its time to the economic demands of the workers, like higher wages, more benefits. Now, ours is a political organization or a labor center, as we call it, and we are catering to the workers in their social and political demands, not in the workplace, but in the level of government policies. Like we do struggles and campaigns against precarious work. We do campaigns in order to raise the wages of the workers to the level of living wage, which is different from minimum wage. Those are the campaigns that we have been doing prior to the COVID crisis. So it's a political organization of the workers, but not only limited to workers' issues. It also articulates demands regarding issues such as democracy, issues regarding what third world countries experience, like imperialism, the economic system, neoliberalism. So in terms of government policies, we engage with the government in the spectrum of public ideas.
Okay, that's interesting, and I might go back on more of that later in the interview. At the moment, as I mentioned in the beginning, the Philippines probably, or the government of the Philippines, has implemented one of the harshest measures, lockdown measures in the world, and that poor people are treated badly and without regard to their welfare, to their health, and their overall well-being. Some 2.5 million workers lost their jobs also because of the lockdown when they were laid off from their workplaces. And at the moment, these lockdown would ease in the very near future. So what is your union's perspective on that? Are the workers ready to go back to work? Or in the first place, were they working during lockdown even?
Okay. Well, during the lockdown, there was really only a few sectors that were operating. Those are in food production because these are essential things. that we need in order to survive this crisis. So our workers in the food industry would continue on working, but most they were sent home under quarantine and lockdown, and they could not work. And the arrangement should have been the ideal thing, and the government promised that as they stay home, they will be given aid, cash aid. But not everyone got it, and it's the amount is not enough. So they really suffered
So how
hunger.
much did they get? This is you're talking about the social amelioration
Amelioration
program.
package, yeah. They get 8,000 pesos
Mhm.
social amelioration package.
Is
That
that for a
separate.
month, or is that for a
That's for
month
the
or the whole
entire.
year?
That's for the entire quarantine period of 2 months.
Mhm.
So they have to try to make that fit the budget,
Mhm.
and it cannot. And they also the Department of Labor, our Department of Labor also offered 5,000 one-time payment to them, and in our unions, only one guy was able to avail,
Mhm.
and the Department of Labor already like stopped the subsidy. So that's the situation before the lockdown. So naturally, many workers uh, would like to. It's natural for them that they are looking forward to working and to feed their families. But then the problem here we face, and we're explaining to our unions. BMP, by the way, is composed of 70 unions. That the government has eased out restrictions, but the problem is, what is the basis for the easing out of the restrictions? Well, they imposed the lockdown and the quarantine when only a few hundred people were infected with the virus. In fact, it was the strictest of all the lockdown and quarantines that the world has ever experienced, with 120,000 people being cited for violations and imprisoned.
Mhm.
uh, I think no one can top that all around the world. 120,000 people arrested. Now, uh, they did that when there were only just 100 cases of COVID infections. But then they're going to ease up on the restrictions when we now have at present more than 15,000 cases of COVID. So what's the logic behind that? When it was 100 cases, you did all of this complete lockdown and quarantine. And then when we have 15, it rose to 15,000 cases, you ease up the restrictions. We have not flattened the curve
Mhm.
in this case. The reason why, because the government has never really implemented mass testing and contact tracing, and it has no comprehensive plan about how to address the health issue. And so the cases are still rising as of the moment. We have not solved it. But what's the basis of the easing out? The reason for it is not because we have already solved the problem of COVID, but because the capitalists and businesses have been complaining with the government because they cannot operate. And since they cannot operate, they would not be able to accumulate capital. And the government has been listening to them, and they eased up restrictions without any mass testing, without any contact tracing, with the infection problem still being there. And so this will be putting our workers at risk. So the attitude of our organization is to protect the worker first and help them by supporting them, giving them sufficient support.
So what are they doing? If this is a demand from businesses and from employers, um, what are they doing? How are they securing the workplaces? Are they doing something? Are they reorganizing the workplace to ensure that there is physical distance between the workers?
Now, this is quite funny because uh, when this was just starting out, they have been advising people to use alcohol, sanitizers, and you wear face mask. And that's the very, very basic protection that they advise people to do. And we, even with that, our COVID cases has been increasing. And now, when the businesses open, the same advice they do. Now, the Labor Department issued an advisory to be followed by these businesses, and it contains the very same thing that never stopped the virus from spreading. Provide your workers with face masks, sanitizers, and alcohol, and disinfect your workplace.
Yeah.
and it does not provide sufficient protection.
Yeah. If workers get sick, because if they get the infection from their workplaces, is there a provision for healthcare, or is there, how will they get treated in the hospital? Will they pay for it, or will the employer pay for it?
Now, the employer has no responsibility at all. No responsibility. So they will let the workers work, no responsibility at all. And if you have a worker who gets sick, then they're going to be sent home, and the employer will be free, will go scot free from responsibility. Now, the thing here is, in the Philippines, we have what we call the PhilHealth system, and there's a universal health law. Uh, in the beginning, the PhilHealth, our kind of insurance, social insurance, where workers pay for it every month, a part of their wages in order to avail of that insurance. And when they get sick, the hospital bills are going to be covered. Now, PhilHealth announced at the start of this pandemic that they're going to cover in full the amount of hospitalization. Just to give you an example of how much does it cost here in the Philippines in order to be treated for COVID. Now, this is a true report that I have seen, and one person who got sick got treated for 15 days, and she spent 1.3 million pesos,
Goodness.
and 1.3 million pesos for 15 days. Now,
And the workers could not
later on,
afford that, isn't
the
it?
workers could not afford that. Now, how about the PhilHealth? At the start, they said they're going to cover everything. But then they announced right after that they're just going to cover a part of it. And they're just going to cover 43,000 for mild cases, up to 786,000 for serious cases. That's 1.3 million. And the maximum that PhilHealth will provide is 786,000 pesos. And how would a
One
worker pay for the
1.3
difference?
million is roughly, yeah, 200,000 pounds. And
200,000 pounds.
yeah, here no one can afford that as well.
That's
But
big money.
yeah, but at least here we have the National Health Services, where you can go to the hospital and you'll be treated for free. That's really awful. And I
Yeah,
could only imagine for those who work daily and earn on a daily basis and not part of the union. So what can they do?
you're gonna like just pray that you're gonna get cured through your own antibodies, because with this amount of money that you have to spend, and government would not provide for your full recovery, how can you pay for the difference? That's several hundreds of thousands of pesos difference from the one that is going to be covered by government.
Yeah, I want to go now to your work, or your union's work, because with the lockdown, and even with the restrictions, there are still restrictions to mobility, to how many people can be in an assembly. How do you go about your union organizing, talking to people, doing mass meetings? Can you still do that?
It's a huge adjustment just to contact people. And the workers, most of them do not have any access to computers, laptops. They have phones, smartphones, where they could communicate through data, through the internet. And it's from at the start it was difficult to be just the effort to contact them. Now, but we have to make the adjustments. So so that's what we do right now. Like, even in uh, disinform spreading of information, we use the computer. Organizing mass actions, we use the computer. And there's a problem also. What type of mass action are you gonna organize during this time when people are being told to observe social distancing? Of course, we cannot anymore gather into big groups in order to give expression to our demands. So, like, we have to look for ways, creative ways, in order to do that. And one example of that is during May 1 celebrations. Labor Day is a big thing for the workers. It's like the birthday party of all workers worldwide. And it would be very, very unfortunate if we don't celebrate May 1, at least in, within the limitations and restrictions that is imposed by government. So we tried to organize a collective action by asking the workers to go out of their houses, bring out their cooking utensils, show that they don't have food in the house, and and make and do a noise barrage within their own homes, and record it so that we could gather all of this and show it through social media in order to articulate our demands from government. The demands being we should have mass testing, because until now we have fallen short of the target. The target would be 30,000 a day. The government admitted that they cannot, cope up with the target. They were the ones who declared the target of 30,000 a day, but then they admitted they cannot cope up with the target, and later on they abandoned it and said that the private institutions must do it. But then our demands would be mass testing. We were demanding for subsidies, more reliable and sufficient subsidies, and we did that through noise barrage. So that we could show that even during this time, the workers will not be silenced. And it is also very, very important to maintain our organization, not to fall into any inactivity because of the enforced lockdown.
Yeah. Is this period and the resulting social difficulties for everyone, especially for workers, is this encouraging workers to join unions? Are trade unions like yours or federation like yours, are you getting more membership now? Or how difficult it is also? How challenging is it to recruit members?
Well, because of the situation, it's already difficult before the lockdown, and it would be difficult because of the means of communication that are limited means of communication available to us. But I'll tell you what, this crisis has exposed the system to the workers through their own experience of of how government responded, of how they were hungry during this period, of how government like treated them as subhumans, imprisoning 120,000 workers, and not only imprisoning, some were even killed, some were even beaten up just because they went out, because they are so hungry, they have to sell something like peddle some fish or whatever just to be able to make money in order to feed themselves. They have seen it through their own experience. I cannot answer that just I cannot answer the question as of this moment, but we could pretty much see or expect that because workers have seen it firsthand how the system works against them and favors the businessman, and how repressive government is. And when in fact when they go back to the workplace, they would face more exploitation because the labor department has decreed or given advice to the businesses that they could reduce salaries of the workers returning to work. That's labor advisory number 12. So the workers will be experiencing this. And it cannot but result into a certain form of realization for millions of workers. If before they just would like to preserve their jobs, and because they want to preserve their jobs, they fear organizing because it might bring in, repercussions with respect to the response of the business owner. Right now, because of this experience, they may be more willing to act in an organizational matter, whether that would be a union or a non-union, but within the workers' movement.
You have mentioned earlier, and indeed, crisis brings forward opportunities. There are challenges, but there are also opportunities, and social actors always seize that moment to bring forth those opportunities and and possibilities for enlarging the organized and collective initiatives and people that are joining those collective initiatives. In terms of creating alliances, not just between workers, but also reaching out to other sectors, like a federation of social movements. Are there such initiatives at the moment? And are there steps for bringing together various demands for what do we wanted to see when all this is over?
Okay.
It will take a
Even
long time, but
yes.
an alternative future.
Even prior to the COVID pandemic, BMP, my organization, has been in alliance or in contact or joining hands with social movements. Our organization is involved in the climate change issue. It is partnering up with organizations such as the Philippine Movement for Climate Justice, and joining hands with youth and students. We have the Samahang Progresibo ng Kabataan, who is in fact a member of the BMP Central Committee. We have been doing that, creating these linkages, because we believe that the workers must lead even the democratic struggle, not just their own sector, but they must be at the forefront of all democratic struggles. And in fact, this new situation that we are facing right now, where the system has been exposed, where capitalism itself is being indicted here as a failed system in order to address a humanitarian crisis that we have. Then or after the easing up of restrictions, then there must be more more of these links being brought together in order to build a united front on various issues, but most importantly on the question of systemic change, because we can no longer have this kind of system uh, in midst of the crisis. Having this kind of system which cannot address the crisis at all, when human lives are at stake, then what will happen to us? So the system is the question, or the issue of systemic change must be uh, put on the table, and it involves workers, everyone, students, climate activists, human rights activists, and everyone.
Yeah. In this work as well of bringing together various voices and building an agenda for or realizing alternatives or systemic alternatives, how do you see or what role do you see for international solidarity in this initiative, and is there potential for that at this period?
We are one in our experience, and we are one, I think, in our realization that this type of system, a capitalist system, will never work in these types of situations. It can never work because it is geared towards the protection of profit. Now, your system geared towards the protection of profit will now be faced with a humanitarian crisis. It cannot convert itself into a system where they will take care of the human being first. And I think all around the world we experience this. The problem is a humanitarian crisis. What should be done is we must take care of human beings first. But governments under the system take care of profit first, profits of corporations. And since we are one in this realization, and there are various groups and social movements that are involved in all issues relating to this, then we international solidarity becomes more important, assumes a greater importance. And we have discovered, because we also have to adjust and change our ways of doing things. Before, in order to link up, we have to travel from one country to another, join conferences, meet people. Like right now, Doti, it's the first time that I saw you, but I don't have to go to London in order to talk to you. But we are linked through social media, and we could use social media to link our struggles together. Struggles of peoples from Africa to Asia and Europe. And what I'm saying here is that uh, we have discovered, or maybe we have been forced to make use of means that are more inexpensive, available to us. Therefore, we must take advantage of that and create more linkages and link our struggles as an international struggle, because we commonly are victimized by the system. And the way to change the system is to change it worldwide, and not only in single countries. It is peoples who are oppressed everywhere to link up.
Those are that's brilliant, simply brilliant, and very very inspiring. And yeah, I wish that and I do hope that we can work together, and that in all these common aspirations, and also making, you know, human rights, workers' rights, protection, and well-being of everyone gain primacy over profit making and
Yes.
capital accumulation. So thank you very much for joining me in this interview, and for giving us your time. Thank you, and take care.
Okay, Dottie, thank you. And thank you also for Global Justice Now.